This is the Red Podcast.
This is episode number 80. We're going to talk about how to get press for your product or service and give you 5 reasons to make people care about what you're doing. That's coming up on this episode of the Red Podcast.
This is the Red Podcast. Real entrepreneur development. Make more money, work less, and live a life of freedom. No BS advice that really works. Here's your hosts, David Hooper and Laurel Staples.
Well, you're about 1/3 of the way through on the Kickstarter campaign for the business formerly known as Project X. It's called Love Your Face, natural skincare line that also has a social element. How you holding up?
So far, so good. It's been challenging. We're almost halfway funded, and we have a lot of time to go. So that's progress.
You got 2/3 to go.
2/3 to go.
You got to pace yourself.
It's emotionally taxing. I'm not going to lie to you.
I want to talk about that for a minute because this campaign, 35 days, 33 days?
It was 35 days.
35 days. You go in thinking that that's a short amount of time, and it is. But when you're in the middle of it, it's like running a marathon.
Oh, it is. We're at like mile, 13 in the marathon? Mile 10?
No, yeah.
Maybe in the marathon.
Mile
8. You wonder if you're going to make it. You have faith in yourself. It's like you've trained for so long and you have the ability, but you kind of cross your fingers at this point and drink some water and hope that you can run the rest of the way.
Get you some of that power gel. Hope you have the energy to make it through.
Exactly. And what's scary about Kickstarter is it's all or nothing. You either reach your goal and go beyond that and get all your money, or you get nothing. So you're kind of at this stage just waiting to find out what your life is going to look like in the next 27 days or something.
I think it's a lot like having a kid. You got to get through that 9th month. You want to have a healthy kid, but even then, that's just the beginning. Even if this thing gets funded, even if you fulfill all the initial orders, all the pre-sales, you still got to have a successful business at that point.
That would be more exciting to me than the whole pregnancy part of this Kickstarter campaign. Just saying.
You say that now. We'll check in and see how that goes because this thing is going to fund. And we've got a special opportunity for Red listeners. We're actually going to talk to you about how to have a head-turning Kickstarter campaign that not only gets attention, but gets you the money that you need if you want to have success with crowdfunding. We can show you how to do that. And the way to do that would be to contribute $100 or more to the Love Your Face Kickstarter campaign. To find out more about this, go to lyface.com/Kickstarter. At the very least, give $1 because what Laurel is doing there as far as marketing, it's just amazing. The follow-up and keeping in touch with people and seeing how she works the project, you can learn a lot just by watching her. And speaking of watching her, you're in the middle of this press junket. What I'm going to call it's the media blast, where you're going out to all sorts of media, and that's what we're going to be talking about on this episode of Red Podcast today. Red stands for Real Entrepreneur Development. We help you build an audience, we help you sell more products, we help you make more money, and we do that through personality marketing. We bring your personality and the personality of your products to the forefront so you can become famous within your industry and beyond. I've done it for 2 decades in the music industry. Laurel's done it several times over her career as an entrepreneur. We're doing it again with Love Your Face. Here's a problem, Laurel. You got something like Love Your Face. You got something new, and you want to get attention for it. We're going to talk about how to do that.
I think the first thing to note is, for instance, I've started this Kickstarter campaign. You want people to be really interested in it. You want the newspapers to be knocking at your door going, what are you doing? Tell me all about it.
They're not doing that?
Yeah, no one's doing that. That is just not what happens because they don't know about you. So I think you have to realize that when you have something cool going on, you are the one that has to go out there and spread the word with the media and with the press because they're not going to come to you.
Yeah, press doesn't come to you. There is sort of a tipping point where it's like that groundswell. People start to see you more often and folks will start to reach out to you. But initially, it's like moving a boulder up the hill. Folks aren't going to come to you because you really don't have anything that they're going to be aware of. You have to make sure that they're aware of you.
Yeah, just because you launch doesn't mean anyone knows that you launch and doesn't make it relevant. So you do have to do some work to make it relevant. And keep in mind as well, when I first started my retail clothing store years and years ago, I actually got a lot of local press and they did come to me, but it took some time for them to become aware of what I'm doing. And to get momentum on your project or your business, you want people to be aware of it sooner rather than later. And you don't want to just wait for it to be on their time when they come to you. So you really do have to take control of this.
The first thing you have to ask yourself is this newsworthy? Just because you're involved does not mean that it's newsworthy. Let's use your retail store as an example. Just because you were involved in it, nobody cared, but it was a very unique retail clothing store, ecologically friendly. It was, as far as I know, the very first one in Nashville to be doing that.
True, it was newsworthy, and that it was more local newsworthy. Like I was opening an eco-friendly men and women's clothing store that had all organic cotton and hemp and bamboo and recycled materials. It was something completely new for Nashville. So, of course, the local papers are interested in something opening up in town. So that was a news angle for the local scene. But that wouldn't have been very interesting for anyone outside of Nashville. So you can't expect like national press to come to you about your little store in your little town if it's not relevant to everybody.
When you're looking at your product, when you're thinking about going after press, you have to ask yourself, why will people care? Again, not just because you're involved, but for example, Laurel, your retail store, I think it fit into newsworthiness because there's been a huge movement over the last few years to have more sustainability, more environmentally friendly options. Things like the Prius, things like higher mileage cars. This fit right into that. So if people were interested in environmental aspects of things and also fashion, you could have gone for either one of those things.
Absolutely. I think the local media angle for that retail store was that this type of store was opening up in Nashville, Tennessee. And that was a pretty cool thing for the town. But at a national level, your angle might be totally different, and you might pitch it to the press as, look at all these different eco-friendly clothing stores opening up, or look at how people are now swaying towards the green holiday gifts and things like that. You have to make it more relevant on a national level. You can quote yourself in a press release and
Sure.
with that, but you do have to make it more relevant than, hey, we just opened up our store.
Well, reporters want to be in on something. They want to be the first people to let everybody know about something. So if you can show them that there's a movement, and in this case, it's the ecologically friendly sustainability environmental movement, and get them in as part of it, the tastemakers showing everybody else that this is something to watch, they'll sometimes latch onto that.
Exactly.
We get a ton of press releases here for Red Podcast. Certainly my work in the music business, I got a lot of music. We get a lot of books here, a lot of people that want interviews, even though we don't do interviews. So I think there's a conversation there as to what people are looking for. You absolutely have to do your research. It's obvious to me when people come to us and they want to be a guest on Red Podcast that they've never, ever listened to it.
Yeah, we've had that.
It happens all the time.
Yeah.
And we get just general blanket press releases. People, for the most part, don't read press releases. Now, if somebody wanted to send me a book with a personal letter, hey, David, I've heard Red Podcast. I know that you're about real entrepreneur development, and this is a book for entrepreneurs. They send me a book. Even if it's a digital copy of the book, I'm going to look at it.
I think on that note, the press does read press releases, but they might just read the first sentence of yours. So for us, you definitely, if you're going to reach out to someone like us, you definitely have to be more personal. And I would say being more personal when you're reaching out to the press is a positive.
Yeah, definitely do the research. Writers, reporters, they are people too. And if you can kind of follow them and see what it is that they write about, because a lot of these guys, they're not being assigned stories. They're coming up with their own stories. They're pitching an editor, and that's how the stories get in the magazines. These are the people that actually change the trajectory of a magazine that they're writing for. So you can pitch something to them, and they can possibly make it into a story, but you need to find out about them first in order to know if they're a match for it. Because sometimes people write about certain things and sometimes they don't. Just like us, we talk about real entrepreneur development, but we're not here talking about cars. We're not here talking about sexism, unless it has to do with real entrepreneur development. We're not talking about politics. It's always entrepreneur focused.
The first thing you want to ask is, why will people care? Why are people going to care about your business, your product, your service? Because again, as you said, David, it's not just because you're involved. So let's talk about some reasons people might care.
So I got 5 reasons people might care. The first one, you've got a new product that solves a problem. And if it solves a problem in an interesting way, even better.
Give me an example. Tell me something you saw on Kickstarter, because we've been on Kickstarter a lot recently that solved a problem.
Doing a lot of research. Well, there are a lot of Kickstarter projects. And one of the ones that I see over and over again on Kickstarter, multiples, in fact, the slim wallet, minimalist wallet. And the problem that it solves, women might not know this, but when men put a big, bulky wallet in their back pocket, it'll throw your hips off. My grandfather, big hip problems from having a huge wallet in his back pocket and sitting on it. You can't sit straight, and it'll tighten up one hip, and the other one has to compensate for that. You walk funny. Right now, what you're seeing is a move toward minimalist wallets. They're easier to carry around, but you can also put them in your front pocket. It's better on your hips. You can sit down more naturally, and that's a great problem. If you're in pain, you've got hip problems, front pocket is great for you. If you don't want to carry around a ton of stuff, front pocket wallet's great for you as well.
Where are you going to put your loads of cash, David?
Well, that's one of the reasons that you're seeing all these minimalist wallets, because nobody's carrying around cash now. Yeah, the one I have actually, because it's funny, I use a wallet like that, and I just have a few credit cards. I've got a license, I've got a gym membership, a library card, and it has a little pocket that you can put, $20, maybe 2 or 3 bills in it.
We're going to need more than that in there.
Well, I got $1 million bill. I don't like to carry it around all the time.
No one can break that one.
So number 2, big milestone, such as 1 million albums sold, 500,000 books sold, which is great for social proof. But if you've gone through a big milestone, if you've been in business for 25 years, 10 years, 20 years, sold a number of copies of whatever it is that you've got, that can be newsworthy.
Another one is if you are doing some tie-in to a charity, if there's a social element to it, the media does like to cover things like that.
And that's one of the things that you do with Love Your Face.
Exactly.
You go to lyface.com/Kickstarter, you'll find all about that. But we wanted to do that. I'm not saying that we wouldn't have done that otherwise, but when we were figuring out about Love Your Face and how we were going to market it and get the word out, we thought about that. This is a great way for the press to pick up on it. The brand will get even bigger because of this social element.
And the story really goes beyond just us and our social enterprise. It's, if I was going to pitch that aspect to the media, I would pitch something bigger than that, saying a lot of different companies are now social enterprises and they want to give back to the community. And here's some companies that are doing that. So instead of just Love Your Face as a social enterprise, make it a bigger story if you're pitching it to a bigger newspaper or magazine. Yeah,
I think you definitely want to look like you are part of a winning team. Just as a kind of a side note, I knew a band one time. They were a boy band. Remember the boy band phase? You probably were right there with the walls of your room with Backstreet Boy posters all over them, right?
I don't think that was my personality. But I do like NSYNC if you take everyone away but Justin Timberlake. So I think I just like Justin Timberlake. Continue.
So that was a huge trend in music for a long time. And I knew a boy band, and they knew that nobody cared about them. There wasn't a whole lot of differentiation, but when you compared them to NSYNC or Backstreet Boys or LFO or whatever the other boy bands that were popular at the time.
Were you in this band, David?
I wish.
Okay.
I wish.
Just checking.
So these guys were pretty smart, though, about marketing, and they had like a boy band fan page. And they were like, these are the top boy bands that we really like. And they had NSYNC, your favorite, Laurel. They
Without everyone but
Backstreet
Justin
Boys.
Timberlake.
They had LFO. They had 98 Degrees. All of them. And then they put in 5th place themselves. So they were just kind of getting the runoff from all these other guys. And that can be basically what you're doing when you get on the bandwagon of, like you're doing, Laurel, supporting female entrepreneurship. You're supporting female-oriented business. There are a lot of people that have done that before you. It's a winning formula. Guys like Kiva, you're just getting on the bandwagon. And I think it's a proven concept, so people are more comfortable getting in on it with you.
Well, you mentioned Kiva. Tell people what that is.
So Kiva is microloans. Kiva allows people to start their own businesses, and it's in countries primarily where $25 is a lot of money. It's not that much money here in the United States. You can donate $25 to somebody, and other people do it. Like you and I would combined for $50. We get 10 other people for another $250. And that can start a business in a lot of places. And then they pay you the money back with an interest-free loan.
It's a great organization. If you haven't looked that up, go ahead and look that up. What's another reason people might care about your story?
Human interest is always great. If you've got a story behind what it is that you're doing. One of the big ones that I can think of that was very, very popular on the internet was this homeless guy. A guy from Columbus Dispatch up in Columbus, Ohio, went to give a homeless guy some money and found out he had a great radio voice. Do you remember this guy?
I do.
Ted, I can't remember what his last name was, Ted something or another. I've actually hired him for voiceover work, and that's what he's gone on to do since then. It was an interesting story because he's homeless. It's like the small town boy does good. He got off drugs. He got his act together, and now he's a voiceover guy. That's interesting to people. People want to know the story behind what it is that you're doing, and because of that, I know he was the voice of Kraft Macaroni and Cheese. Like I mentioned, I hired him. And a lot of people have hired him since then because we got to find out about the story behind the person, and we want to be part of helping somebody up.
Also, if your business or product or new service is related to a current issue, something going on, for instance, we recently put out a podcast episode on Veterans Day where we talked about different veteran stories. So that was related to something going on. If you have that same thing going on with your business, that's going to be a great thing to tell the media about.
Yeah, current issue related is great. And that sort of blends in with what we talked about the ecologically friendly retail store. That can be a current issue because that's certainly something that people are concerned about. And if you've got something like that that maybe is an environmental issue, maybe it's a political election, maybe it's a holiday, maybe it's something like Ebola, whatever the latest natural disaster is.
Oh, dear.
Yeah. I mean, if you've got something like that, take advantage of the momentum and give people a solution for it.
For instance, say there was some law being passed about recycling, or there was something in the media about that, and you have a retail store like I did, and you're selling recycled clothing or jewelry made from recycled materials. That would be something to pitch the media.
Absolutely. Things like landfills. Our landfills are filling up. The oceans are being polluted. We're having to send garbage out into outer space now. There are so many ways that you could take advantage of that with an ecologically friendly retail store. There's ways that you can take advantage of it with Love Your Face. Certainly, when you look at statistics of are women starting businesses, are more women in the workforce than ever before, how easy it is to start a business, just general entrepreneur stuff. Most businesses have an opportunity to take advantage of a related either current issue or hot topic. We've been talking a lot about Laurel's projects, Love Your Face, her retail store that she had. Give you another example just to end this on. Bad real estate market, bad economy. How many times have we heard that over the last few years?
A lot.
Now real estate is turning around. Your real estate book, for example, or if you're a realtor, take advantage of that. Let people know that the real estate market is turning around. People need some good news. It's a great way to get press. It's very hot. People are waiting for relief. Give it to them. So let's run down those 5 reasons real quick, Laurel. New product that solves a problem in an interesting way. A big milestone, such as number of copies sold. Maybe you've been in business for 20, 25 years. A charity or social element. 4th is a human interest angle. And 5th, something that is related to a current issue or hot topic.
Next, once you have your story in place, you know what's going to be interesting for the media. You have to know who to pitch. That is going to be really important. And you have to know a combination of 2 things.
You need to find the press outlets that can help you reach your specific target market. But at the same time, also the press outlets that are going to be interested. Oprah could help all of us reach our audience because she is a blanket all over the United States. She's really, really big. David Letterman, Jay Leno, any of these late night talk shows that have come through, they're very good about getting your word out to a lot of people. But can you actually get to them? That's the question.
I keep waiting for Oprah to email me. I know this Kickstarter is just started, but I thought I would have gotten an email.
She's had a week.
I know. I thought she'd be on this. She's not.
And that's not to say don't go for those, but if you really want to use your limited time and resources, especially with something like Kickstarter, you've only got 35 days to do this, Laurel.
Mm-hmm.
You've got to focus on the guys that can help you reach your audience, and you've got to focus on the people that you absolutely have an opportunity with. Go for those low-hanging fruits.
And how many times have you seen a story get picked up in a local paper or a smaller magazine that got picked up later in national media?
Well, that's how it starts. And you're finding that out. The more and more people that get involved with Love Your Face, the more and more people want to get involved. Same with Red Podcast. You can get pretty weird about the tie-ins when you're going to media. I've got an example that I know Laurel is not going to know, but you may, especially if you're over 35 years old. Musician named Ted Nugent, Laurel. You ever heard of him?
I've heard of him.
Talk to me about him.
You talk about him all the time.
No, I don't.
He's in some band.
Ted Nugent, well, the band is called Ted Nugent, and he's a guitar player, very, very conservative, very political. Ted Nugent is a guy that there were some Make-A-Wish kids that wanted to go hunting, and Make-A-Wish said, no, we don't like anything where we kill something. He said, forget it. I'm going to take those kids myself. We're going to go on an African safari. We're going to hunt some endangered species.
That's horrible.
So that's the kind of guy he is. But he's really big when it comes to hunting, bow hunting, gun control, and that kind of thing. But he's a rock musician. And bear with me, because this is where this is going. That tie-in of bow hunting and gun control is going to enable him to get his music written about in a hunting magazine, bow hunting magazine, any kind of Second Amendment magazine. The tie-ins can be pretty weird when it comes to getting press. And if you've got something about you, maybe you've got some volunteer work that you're doing, or maybe you're of a specific ethnicity or a specific origin, it might be an opportunity for you to get some press on that.
Okay, what children wanted to go out and kill some stuff?
I don't know. Probably Southerners, where we are, Nashville. You know how it is.
That's some judgment, David.
Judgment. Yeah, we can talk about it because we're from the South.
You're a vegetarian. Just saying.
All right, let's end on this one, Laurel, how to start a conversation, because right now you're in the middle of press week for Love Your Face. You're having to start a lot of conversations. How are you doing that?
The best way to do it for what I'm doing, and probably for a lot of people out there, is to make a personal connection. And you can do this through email, through sending actual snail mail. I'm doing a combination of both. But I'm not just sending out a press release. I'm actually reaching out to people in a personal way and trying to make a connection that way and then pitching my story.
And what are you saying when you reach out to people?
What I'm doing is reaching out to people and mentioning that I liked an article that they wrote, saying something personal, if it's a blog that I'm reaching out to about their blog, things like that to indicate that I've done my research, that I've been watching them and paying attention to them, and that I really like what they're doing, and I thought they'd connect with what I'm doing instead of any sort of mass email. That just sounds awful. No one wants to receive a mass email, so do not send a mass email.
People want to feel special, reporters included. So if you can let somebody know you've read what they're talking about, if you can let somebody know specifically what you agree on or where you disagree and open up that conversation, they're interested in it, they're writing about it. Don't be afraid to talk about what they're doing, because that's going to get you in to where you can talk about what you're doing. Press releases, you've got a press release, but that's not the way you're leading in, right?
True. I have the press release because I think for traditional media sources that a press release is important, but I also think it's important to kind of open with your pitch before you put in the press release. So if you have a press release, you want to copy and paste it in the email and put something personal at the top. What you don't want to do is put your press release as an attachment, because they're not going to download your attachment because it might have a virus. So you want to be sure to paste it in there, put something personal so that they actually read your email, write a great headline if you're sending an email, or send something interesting in the mail, snail mail, if you're doing it that way.
I'm going to disagree with you on this, because I think to attach the press release is perfectly fine if it's a PDF. Most people have virus protection these days. You can link to it if you don't feel comfortable about that. But I agree with you. Press release is important because if it's written material, a lot of times because reporters are so busy, they're actually going to copy directly from the press release. And you can put the wording that you want very specifically in that press release, and that's going to help you get your message out.
I disagree with you, David, though, because I think it's one more or two more clicks that someone in the media has to take to read your press release. And if you just copy and paste it in the email, it's just right there, and they can know if they're going to be interested in it.
Well, fair enough. But I think that in the end, we do agree that you got to have a personal connection, a personal note. Don't just blast hundreds and hundreds of people. I mean, you're going to hundreds and hundreds of people, but it's all individual letters that you're writing them.
Exactly.
Sample products to review. That can absolutely help start the conversation. Have we talked about lumpy mail on here?
Briefly.
Lumpy mail is basically a very catchy way to send something to people. And I think I talked about the time I got something from a band, and it was a tombstone, like a literal tombstone, a real one. Attached to this tombstone, there was a CD. So, of course, I'm going to play it because it's attached to a tombstone. I've seen people literally send full-on trash cans with their press release in it. Hey, don't throw my press release away. You have to reach in the trash can and get it. So there's some very creative things that you can do with what we call lumpy mail. The final thought on this, Laurel, how to start the conversation, follow up, because you're not going to always hear from people right away.
I think you do have to follow up with people. It's in your best interest to do so. And you're trying to start a conversation. You're not just trying to blast people. So people are busy. Keep that in mind and make an effort to follow up with everybody politely.
Politely, not annoying. There's a very fine line. And what that is, I can't exactly say. It's like the Supreme Court in pornography. You know it when you see it. But don't just follow up every day. Be patient. You can follow up maybe a week later. Sometimes if I'm trying to develop a connection, it can take 6 months, a year, maybe longer than that. It takes time. So a couple final thoughts. I mentioned earlier that once something hits, others will follow that social proof, and that's going to help you. Don't be afraid to start out at the smaller blogs, podcasts, media outlets, and work your way up that way. Also, keep in mind that journalists move around, and many are freelancers. So if one of them agitates you, be cool, because you never know when you're going to run into them again. And if you have a good connection with one, follow up with them personally, because they may be working somewhere else. And I've got connections with guys that I've had probably 20 years, and they've moved all around. And sometimes when they need stories, they're going to come back to me. I'm one of their people they come to, and I can go to them if I need to get the word out in something that they write for. If you have any questions or comments, check us out online. We're at redpodcast.com. There you will find old episodes as well as information on how to get with me and Laurel directly. Also, if you're on iTunes, we'd appreciate a review. That will help us come up more frequently in the iTunes search engines. More people will find us, and we will develop the real entrepreneur development community. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time on the Red Podcast.
You've been listening to Red Podcast, Real Entrepreneur Development. Subscribe today using iTunes, Stitcher, or via RSS at redpodcast.com.